Welcome. You're listening to the Keeping Ashland Healthy podcast, a podcast production of the Mental Health and Recovery Board of Ashland County, Ohio. Thanks for joining us. And welcome to another episode of Dr. Ashley and the Boss. Welcome, Dr. Ashley.
Thanks, David. How are you?
I'm doing well, and we are right in the middle third of our series on getting to know your Ashland County Mental Health and Recovery Board members.
Yes.
And who do we have in studio with us today?
We have a special guest today, Connie Butler, the Nominating Committee Chair of the Mental Health and Recovery Board.
Welcome, Connie, to the Mental Health and Recovery Board.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate you joining us. And for you listeners, we have been talking about what are mental health and recovery boards. We've gone through the Ohio Revised Code. We've talked about the purpose, the structure, the expectations and requirements of a board. And we've been walking through each of the Mental Health and Recovery Board members here in Ashland County so you have a better idea of who they are and why they're serving, the various capacities they're serving in, and kind of what motivates them. So we're going to cover that and more with Connie, who has been on the board for some time. But without further ado, Dr. Ashley, let's get started. So
let's do it.
One of the things we talk about, Connie, is the importance of our members being residents of the county. In fact, it's a requirement. You can't serve on the Mental Health and Recovery Board of Ashland County unless you live in the county. So tell us a little bit, how long have you lived in Ashland County?
I have been in Ashland County for 60 years.
60?
All my life.
60 years.
60.
Yes.
Wow.
That might be a record on the podcast.
I think that might be.
I think it is.
In fact, I live on my family farm.
Uh-huh.
So that's very important to me. But yes, Ashland County is near and dear.
Absolutely. So the reason that is so important is we talk often about our board members representing the community because that's really what they're intended to do as best as we can. We want to have folks from different aspects and industries and education and demographics to represent the entire county. And as you heard, Connie, you family farm, been here for a long time. You know a lot of people in this county, and I think you bring that very unique perspective to the board and the work of the board, and I think that's critical. And we were just chatting before the podcast started, but how long have you been involved with the actual board itself?
Well, after talking with you, David, this is my second term this time, but I've been actually involved for 20 years, and I couldn't believe it. It's like, wow.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've always felt passionate to be involved because you need to in order to help improve services for the county.
That's awesome.
That's just it. These 20 years, I mean, that leads into our second questions about your motivation because, Connie, I know you're motivated to do a lot of things, but why continue to serve on the Mental Health and Recovery Board?
Mine was kind of twofold this time around.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make sure that we have counseling services available for everybody.
Yeah.
Young, old, homebound, etc. And another one was to help promote my job as a dialysis social worker because a lot of people in Ashland County doesn't know we have a dialysis clinic.
No.
Or what that even is.
Yeah.
And so many of our patients are still active in the community, and so you wouldn't know that they are a dialysis patient, but just to get that, get rid of that stigma that if you're on dialysis you can't do anything, or just to try to help educate. I think through that role, working with the different services here in Ashland County, transportation, whatever, is also very important. But again, just making sure we have services available for everybody.
Yeah, that's great.
Absolutely.
That's a subpopulation. I think a lot of folks wouldn't, like you said, they wouldn't even know that exists.
Nope.
And it does take not to get too much off the subject, but there is a time requirement with the dialysis.
Oh,
so
yes.
It is something that it's a challenge.
Life-sustaining treatment. A lot of people don't realize that. You have to come for dialysis or you will ultimately die if you don't.
Sure.
So, trying to work through if it's transportation issues, if it's counseling, emotional, psychosocial issues. Again, being on the board helps me keep up if there's anything new coming out that I can then relay to patients or to anybody in the county.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's really important work that you're doing. If you could just tell us more about your specific role on the board and what that looks like, that would be great.
Okay, well, like I said, I've been a board member, which has been an honor to be. I am now chair of the Nominating Committee. And
that sounds fancy.
Oh, yes, it is.
glamorous, fancy.
We kind of toyed around with that probably, 2 years ago? We came up with the idea of having a nominating committee because I think it's important that people understand, if you're interested being on the board, what that consists of, how much time that involves. And we also look for diverse backgrounds. You don't have to be a social worker, or we look for different, if it's business or teaching or whatever, retirees. But we would like to get more younger people involved. But, we find that there's a lot of individuals who have a lot of time constraints.
Sure.
So, but, having the nominating committee, I feel, has really helped us grow as a board also to try to understand what we need, where we need it, and trying to have representation throughout the county. That we have south, north, and et cetera. So.
No, and let me take a moment to explain to the listeners, in talking with Connie and some of the other board members, the board made some, I think, pretty significant changes this past year in terms of the structure of the board. And, one of the things that I think prevented a lot of people who wanted to serve as a potential board member was the time commitment. So, the board has made a big change in how many meetings are required or expected to serve. So we went from having, 30 meetings, planning to finance and what we call a full board, to just having full board meetings, 12 to 14 times per year. So that changes the requirement to serve in that regards. But as you said, Connie, it's, there are term limits. Sometimes life happens and people can't even complete their whole term. So having a nominating committee that can, on a regular basis, interview people that might be interested, and maybe even putting them in a waiting cycle so they can serve at some point in the future, even if we don't have a available spot in the moment, I think is very wise of the board. And if we can have several people on deck, so to speak, that can serve when there is an opening, I think that's great. So I appreciate your leadership on the nominating committee chair. And I'll just take a moment to say to the audience, if you are at all interested in serving on the board, just contact Ashley or myself. That's Dr. Ashley or myself, 419-281-3139. And we'd be happy to sit down, Connie, myself, and talk through all the expectations. So
absolutely, I might be biased, but I think this is a pretty great board that we have. So
I think so, and it's but they take serving really seriously. So I will say, if you're interested, Connie will ask you questions, and she will make sure that you actually have a passion for the work. She'll explain what the work is, and she wants to make sure you do have the time to give it, because there's nothing worse than having expectations of somebody and then they don't end up serving, and that just puts everybody in a
That's
tough
one
spot.
of my goals for this year. I'm excited that the board has cut down meetings, is for us to be out more involved in community things as board members, because I know it's always you two doing it, but it's like I would like to see the rest of us, if we can, be involved.
Yes, we would love that. Absolutely.
To represent the board.
You bet.
So this next question, I know you're really going to like this. It's a fun one. Tell us about the best gift you ever received and why it was the best.
Well, as I said, this was a stumper for me. I think one of my probably best gift was I also work part-time at Samaritan Hospital, and it was probably 8-9 years ago. We had a young person, probably 4 or 5, that was admitted over Christmas holiday. Mm-hmm. And I remember one of the doctors came to me and said, "Is there any way that you could get Santa Claus to stop?" Mm-hmm. And at that time, which we still do, we had Santa and Mrs. Santa at the Home Hardware. Yeah. So I was able to call down there that morning and said, "Hey, is it possible that you guys could stop on your way home?" And they go, yeah. And I said, "You don't have to bring any gifts, just stop." And so they did, and we got the nicest card from the parents of that child, just thanking the hospital for doing that. And, the doctor personally, and it wasn't, about me, it's just the idea that we did it. And it's like, that's what makes my day.
Yeah,
is
knowing that
helping.
you impacted
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
I think that's wonderful.
That's great.
See, that was a great answer, Connie. I have one more fun one for you, okay?
Okay.
If money were no object and you could go back in time and do anything you wanted with your life, what would that be?
I actually have two answers to that.
All right.
Okay.
If it was no,
Money was no
problem
object.
with money, I always wanted to be a veterinarian
Oh,
I could see that.
when I was a
Yeah.
kid, but it was too long in school.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
too much money. So my second thing would be to stay on the farm and farm.
yeah.
But unfortunately, in today's world, you can't be a small-time farmer.
I-
So we had a small dairy farm, which we ended up having to sell the cows and stuff. We still have the farm, but
Yeah.
that was always a big passion of mine.
That's
so,
really cool.
but
Yeah.
that's what I would have done.
I can totally see both of those. That's a
Yep.
great answer.
Yeah. And I have a feeling that that passion is going to spill over to the next question we have, which is, what work of the board do you think most positively impacts Ashland County?
Well, I've got a couple. The one is the impacts that we have in the school with the liaison program.
Yes.
I think that is awesome. I think we have helped so many
Yeah.
kids, parents.
Yep.
I think it's very, promisable. I mean, I just hope it expands. And just having the availability of Appleseed and Acada. Again, working at the hospital, telling patients, hey, we have these services here in Ashland County. Oh, okay, I didn't know that,
Right.
And then my second thing is my passion for this year is to help work with the rural mental health component with Farm Bureau. We did the farm stress education, and I think it was 2 years ago that OSU had. And there is such a need to educate the farmers and the rural community that it's okay to not be okay.
Right. Right.
I just read an article last night from Farm Bureau about their program that they're rolling out, and it's like, this is awesome. I feel we just need to get it out there so the farmers, rural families know it's available.
Yep. Yep. And you've already taken some steps, I think, like you said a couple years ago, with whether that's leaving cards with information on tables or
Yeah.
places where maybe farmers might shop or interact with other professionals.
Yeah, I've given them to Centera. Let's see, the Equity in Loudonville.
Yeah.
So, I try to follow up, in a couple months to see if they still need them. But my big thing is, this year is to hit the Ashland County Fair.
You bet.
And I'm going to work with Farm Bureau and with, us as a board
Sure.
to see how we can disperse that information.
Right, and just knowing the best places at the fair to make sure those resources are at, because it's not going to always be our table.
No, farmers don't usually go through the merchants building. So, I kind of shared that, we need to have it at the equipment dealers, down where the barns are, whatever that's going to look like.
Yep.
But we need it where they go, not where we think we should have it.
Absolutely.
right.
I think it's great. We have kind of an in with Connie to the mind of farmers and
That's
how
right.
they operate and how we can
Yeah.
best reach them and help
Yeah,
them.
they
great.
are a different breed. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's okay. I mean,
Yeah.
farmers, and the sad thing is the backbone of our world, country, county, and we sometimes forget that
Yep.
or
Yeah.
neglect it.
We
you
love
know.
farmers. We went to the Farmers Bureau breakfast last year.
Yep.
And we had a lot of fun with them.
Yeah,
So
they're neat.
yeah, they're very cool.
Yeah, and I didn't, until I really started researching it, I didn't realize some of the unique stressors that our farmers are under, and some of those generational pressures that, as you said, fifth generation. I mean, some of the things, the idea that, you don't want the farm to fail on your watch kind of a thing. And there's just a lot of pressure to keep things going and do as well as maybe.
Yeah, I mean, so many families have generation farms, and they're like, oh, how am I going to afford this?
Yeah.
Property taxes are going up this year, so
Right.
how are we going to afford it? And if you have a bad year of yields, but then everything's going to, cost of diesel or fertilizer, seed keeps going up, how do you make
Right.
it?
There's so many moving factors, and so many of those factors are outside the control. I think you can plan as best you can to some extent, but some of those things
Mother
are just
Nature
that's
has her
right.
way,
And
and then you have that plus dealing with families, kids, childcare,
Yeah.
because usually the wife is probably working to help
Yeah.
offset. So, that's another stressor in itself. So,
Yeah. Well, your passion in this area, I think, is well appreciated, and we need
Thank
folks
you.
that serve on the board that have this kind of passion. And again, for our listeners, we're speaking with Connie Butler, who is a Mental Health and Recovery Board member. She's also our Nominating Committee Chair. And we're just excited that you continue to serve, and you've served for so long on this board.
Thank you.
Now, I know we probably have not talked about everything you wanted to talk about, Connie, so we always leave room at the end for you to tell us, other areas that you think the listeners should know about what the board's doing, or just generally.
I'm just passionate about all that we do provide, and I think I kind of see us as behind the scenes for a lot of different things in Ashland County, and a lot of things that people don't think it's part of the Mental Health Recovery Board. I mean, you look at the activities down in Loudonville with the Redbird Resilient, just different things that we have been able to do. Listen, on my drive here, I was listening to Cheryl, talking about the grandparents, or that program. And it's like loneliness, and it's like that's a great thing. I mean, there's so many different aspects. So
yeah. We have the three partner agencies: Appleseed, Catholic Charities, and CADA. But as Connie, you said, we partner with organizations like Redbird and the hospital and the university and our school systems. So much of what we do with the board is partner. We have to have these sustainable and these productive partnerships to do the work that we do.
Yes,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Connie, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming out on this chilly day and recording with us.
Yes,
Thank
no
you so
problem.
much.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Keeping Ashland Healthy podcast. The podcast is a production of the Mental Health and Recovery Board of Ashland County, Ohio. You can reach the board by calling 419-281-3139. Please remember that the board funds a local 24/7 crisis line through Appleseed Community Mental Health Center. It can be reached by calling 419-289-6111. That's 419-289-6111. Until next time, please join us in Keeping Ashland Healthy.